Right now, there is something sitting in your refrigerator. You bought it this week. You will throw half of it away by Thursday. And next week, you will buy it again. You've been doing this for years, maybe decades, every week, without ever questioning whether you had to. Here is what nobody tells you. There is a plant that could replace it permanently, one afternoon of planting, one purchase, and it grows back every spring on its own for the next 15 to 20 years. 99% of home gardeners have never grown it. That is not an accident. The food industry spent 70 years making sure you would never learn its name. And here is the open loop I want to hold until the end of this video. There is a reason this plant was legally required in every estate and monastery across the Western world for over 1,000 years. I will tell you exactly what that reason was. But first, you need to understand what is sitting in your produce drawer. What country are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments right now. I read every single one. Here's the thing. The celery sitting in your refrigerator, the mild, uniform, watery stalks, was bred and industrialized in the last 150 years before that, for 1,500 years of Western cooking. The foundational flavor of European cuisine was a completely different plant, a plant called lovage. And the reason it disappeared is not a mystery. It is a business decision. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now, let me tell you about Margaret. She is 67, retired school teacher, has kept a kitchen garden for more than 20 years. She grew everything she could: tomatoes, kale, herbs, peppers. But celery always came from the store, every single week, without exception. She was spending $42 a month on fresh vegetables. Celery was a fixed cost, a line item she never questioned, a subscription she never signed up for. I want to come back to Margaret in a moment. But first, here is what I need you to understand about Lovage itself. Stay with me here, because what comes next is the piece that ties everything together. Lovage belongs to the same plant family as celery Apiaceae. They share ancestry with carrots and parsley, but structurally and nutritionally, these are not the same plant playing the same role. Lovage grows from a massive deep taproot. Once that root establishes, it sustains the plant through any winter. USDA zones 3 through 9. Temperatures down to 30 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. It breaks dormancy every single April. Produces continuously through October. Then goes dormant, then returns. Every year. Without replanting, without purchasing, without your help, the plant reaches 6 feet tall. Hollow stems as thick as your thumb. Dark glossy leaves. Crush one between your fingers. And what you smell is celery, but sharper, more concentrated, more alive. Here is the critical part. Pay close attention to this number. 1 leaf of Lovage flavors, an entire pot of soup. 1 stem seasons a gallon of stock. Commercial celery requires you to use the whole bunch to get that depth. That is not a flavor preference. That is nutrient density. Think of it this way. Commercial celery is tap water pretending to be a river. Lovage is the river. The nutrient content, the phytochemical density, the flavor compounds, these are not comparable things. There are different categories wearing the same family name. A 2022 nutritional analysis published in the journal Foods documented Lovage as among the highest quercetin-containing herbs in the Apiaceae family. Quercetin is an anti-inflammatory flavonoid. It is present in Lovage in meaningful amounts. In celery. Only in trace quantities. References in description below. More vitamin A, more vitamin K, more calcium, more vitamin B6. From one plant that you plant once. Now, back to Margaret. She found Lovage in an heirloom seed catalog in early spring. A packet for $3.80. She ordered it skeptically, planted 6 seeds in late March. I need to be honest with you about year 1, because this is where most people give up. And missing what comes after year 1 is exactly what the food system is counting on. Year 1 is about the root, not the harvest. The taproot goes deep. The plant may only reach 3 feet. The flavor at this stage will seem aggressive, almost harsh. Harvest lightly. Take only the outer leaves. Leave the center intact. This is correct behavior. This is not failure. This is an oak tree spending its first year deciding to live for 200 more. Margaret almost pulled hers out in August. She sent me a message. She said the flavor was overwhelming. She said she had used 1 leaf in a soup and it tasted like celery, shouting, I told her to plant the divided root starts and wait for spring. She waited. Here's what year 2 looks like. And this is the part most people never get to hear about. April. The plant returns on its own. No seeds, no replanting, no effort. It comes back bigger than last year. The stems have thickened, the flavor has deepened and become more complex. Less shouting, more conversation. And production is continuous. April through October. 6 months of harvest from 1 root. Margaret kept a notebook. Blue spiral, kept on the kitchen counter next to the window. Here are her actual entries from year 2. April, first harvest. Lovage leaves in vegetable broth. She wrote, threw out the celery already in the refrigerator, did not miss it. May, stems large enough to use whole. Made a lovage and potato soup. Gave excess leaves to her neighbor Dorothy over the fence. June through September, 0 celery purchased, not once, for 4 months. October, plant goes dormant. Monthly vegetable bill, $42 to $28. $14 a month, $168 a year from a $3.80 investment that she will never need to repeat. Now, if this is opening your eyes to something you have never been told, hit like right now. It costs you nothing. But the algorithm puts this in front of someone else who needs it. Someone with a garden and $42 a month they do not have to keep spending. Here's what I want you to understand about the mechanism, about why Margaret spent 20 years gardening without ever knowing this plant existed. The global celery market is valued at $2.69 billion annually. $2.69 billion every year. Farmers purchase hybrid seeds that are legally prevented from being saved and replanted. Celery cooperatives formed in the 1930s, specifically to control seed supply and mechanization, an entire industrial ecosystem built on one premise. The plant must die every winter. Look at how this works. A seed company sells celery seeds to a farmer. The crop grows, gets harvested, dies with the first frost. Next spring, new seeds. Every year, without exception. The farmer is a subscriber. He never agreed to that subscription. But there is no alternative, because the alternative is a plant that does not require purchasing. Now look at Lovage through that same lens. You plant it once, the taproot establishes. For the next 15 to 20 years, no seeds purchased. The plant divides itself naturally. Neighbors share root divisions over the fence. Seeds fall to the ground and germinate without help. It actively refuses to be monetized. From a seed company's perspective, Lovage is not just a low revenue product. It is a product that eliminates the need for a product. So the industry did not need to suppress Lovage. It did not need a meeting or a policy. It just needed to stop promoting it, stop training chefs on it, remove it from recipes, replace it with the annual alternative. In every cookbook published from 1950 onward, within 2 generations, the knowledge was gone. A 2023 food history study noted that Lovage, once the single most frequent herb in the oldest surviving Roman cookbook in history, has been almost entirely replaced by celery and parsley. The word they used was replaced. The original became the substitute for its own replacement. And that gap between essential and forgotten was not natural. It was constructed quietly through economics alone. Now, a brief note on practical safety before we go further. Lovage belongs to the same plant family that includes plants with compounds called furocoumarins. Most people handle Lovage without any issue whatsoever. It has a long documented history as a culinary ingredient. But if you are on blood-thinning medication, introduce it gradually and mention it to your doctor. And if you are pregnant, use culinary amounts only, nothing therapeutic. Use it as food, not as medicine. The difference matters. With that said, here is what I promised you at the beginning. Here is why this plant was legally required across an entire empire. In the year 800 AD, Charlemagne issued a legal document called the Capitulare Divilis. It listed every plant that every imperial estate was required to cultivate, not encouraged, required by law. In chapter 70, reserved for plants without which an estate was considered incomplete, between fennel and parsley stood one word, levisticum, the Latin name for lovage, not celery. Lovage. Benedictine monks documented its uses in monastery gardens from Ireland to Jerusalem. The Apicius Cookbook, compiled around 400 AD, references lovage in recipe after recipe. It appears more frequently than any other herb in the collection, more than garlic, more than onion, more than salt. For 1,500 years, this plant was the flavor of Western civilization. 50 years of industrial food economics dismantled 1,500 years of cultivation. Not through force, through silence. Dorothy, Margaret's neighbor, planted the starts she received over the fence. Dorothy's daughter visited on a weekend, asked what that flavor was in the soup, went home with her own starts. 1 packet, 3 gardens, producing for the next 15 years minimum with no further purchase. That is what the food industry needed you to forget. And here's what Dorothy told me 3 weeks ago. She said she had been gardening for 30 years, and she could not believe nobody had ever told her about this plant. That is the right response. That is exactly the right response. You now understand what 99% of gardeners do not. You understand the mechanism. You understand why the most used herb in Roman cuisine vanished from American gardens within a single generation. And you understand the alternative. Here is what to do today. Search for Lovage seeds from any heirloom seed supplier. A single packet starts more plants than one garden can use. Plant in rich, well-drained soil, full sun in cool climates. Partial shade if your summers push past 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Space plants 3 feet apart. Harvest lightly in year 1. Let the root establish. From year 2, onward, to harvest from April through October. Use fresh leaves in soups, broths, and salads. Dry them for winter. The seeds work as a spice in bread. Even the roots are edible, traditionally boiled like a vegetable. One planting, 15 to 20 years, no subscription required. Medieval monastery ruins still stand across Europe. The communities that built them scattered 800 years ago, but in those ruins, lovage still grows, wild, untended, without anyone to plant it or water it or care for it. Because that is what a true perennial does. It outlasts the systems built around it. You now know something the food system spent decades hoping you would never learn. The question is what you do with it. If you watched all the way through, type I finished in the comments and share this with one person today. Your mother, your neighbor, someone with a patch of ground and a weekly grocery bill. They do not have to keep paying. Not tomorrow, today. Subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault. Next week, I am going to show you something that challenges a habit most home cooks consider completely harmless. Something you probably do every morning in your kitchen. Something that feels productive, but may actually be working against the very nutrients you are trying to get. If what happened with lovage surprised you, this one will surprise you even more. The vault opens again soon.